All right. So, well, there was a glimmer of hope. The Steelers were up 7-0 at one point in that game. So I'm just living in that moment for the next, 6 months or so. We were up 7-0 on the Chiefs after the first quarter. That's what I'll hang my hat on.
What was crazy about that was the first 10 minutes were the thing, not even 10 minutes, but the first 5 minutes, you were like, okay, things are going the way, at least the blueprint to make it a competitive, fun game. And then it just was a Patrick Mahomes just onslaught, like an avalanche of Mahomes. I was saying though, it was still fun to watch Big Ben. That was it. To me, I stayed up late to finish that game purely because then of Big Ben, which I think the NFL, the NFL probably knew in their scheduling. Listen, whoever plays the Chiefs is probably going to get blown out, especially if once it was Pittsburgh.
Sure,
but we can at least market this as a primetime game, knowing that Mahomes will put on a show, and there's going to be people hanging around just for Big Ben. And Mike Tomlin calls that timeout that last timeout. It was so not for the game. He made it seem like no, for the game, but that was a little bit more of a, hey, can we get Big Ben maybe one more chance at a toss in the end zone or something like that?
Yeah. And in true fashion, they threw short of the sticks, which is just what they've done the whole time. I'm like, he couldn't even airmail it into the back of the end zone.
Canada needs to be fired.
Whatever. Yeah, he's not going to be, most likely. I listened to Mike Tomlin's post-game presser or end of the season presser today, and it doesn't sound like it's going to go that route.
Well,
but the one thing I'll say is that he's very much a mobile quarterback OC, and he had the antithesis of that this year. That's the only thing that I can say would give him the shot to do it again. But it is what it is.
He'll have Aaron Rodgers next year, so that'll be great.
That would be lovely. I would greatly appreciate that. I've seen a lot of Marcus Mariotas float out there.
I'd rather Trubisky. Wouldn't you rather Trubisky over Mariota?
Oh yeah, I would absolutely rather have Trubisky. And at that point, though, either one, then just go with Mason Rudolph at that point. And just no. See, here's my thing though. Whatever you are going to give up to get Mitch Trubisky or Mariota, what are you expecting to gain out of that move is my point. If you're just trying to stay relatively competitive, Mason Rudolph will get you to 8-9, 9-8. You just stick with that then and get a draft pick and go get a quarterback eventually. If you make a move like that for Mariota or Trubisky, to me, you're either making that move to hope that they're the long-term solution, which doesn't make sense. And if they're a bridge, that's the weirdest bridge I've ever seen. For whatever you'd have to give up to get one of those, I don't know. I would
rather bring in fresh blood, and you just hope. I don't think anyone thinks.
Or give Dwayne Haskins a chance at least. I don't think either of them are gonna do anything. But if you're gonna get a Mariota,
No,
I don't know. What is that?
I don't know. I think if I was a Steelers fan and the market went the way it did, you have a team that could be very much. What you need to do is you need to swing big. And you need to try and go get a Russell Wilson. You need to go try and get an Aaron Rodgers. You need to go try and get a Derek Carr, a Deshaun Watson, or you need to get a Kenny Pickett. And at that point, though, I would rather have fresh blood in the organization than a Mason Rudolph. I would rather have someone go get a Kenny Pickett and then a Fitzpatrick for the quarterback room or a Trubisky for the quarterback room and let him start and take some of the lumps versus a Mason Rudolph. But that's just me. I'm so anti-Mason Rudolph, but
I've been so indoctrinated by how they run things there that I just know they would never they value too much that Mason has been there.
Yeah.
To them, that puts him a peg above a lot of other options, which that's a fault. But anyway, I digress. A wild Super Wildcard Weekend
was.
Actually, I didn't. Did you check who was the MVP? I didn't even check to see who won the Nickelodeon. It was Dak. Okay.
Thanks to the guys at Pardon My Take.
Honestly, I think already in the 2 years that they've done it, the MVP has now become strictly a troll award, and I love it. I love that. That's great.
I think it is hysterical as well. I mean, I didn't think it that funny last year. Looking back on it now, the way Trubisky's handled it, and the part of my take, I did an interview with Mitch about that, and like he handles it so well. So you, and especially Dak, because Dak's one of those. Well, we'll talk about it. I mean, he's a serious guy. I don't think he's handling it well. And
probably not. No.
And when you look at who won this week and who didn't, I think the biggest loser of the weekend is Dak Prescott, and you just for the fact that he's the one guy who you look at and say the best quarterback. One of everyone tries to make Dak's a top 5 guy, and him for losing, he just didn't make the big throws, didn't make the big plays, and didn't, like, you're paying a guy $40 million and he didn't lead his team to a victory in a wild card weekend at home. It's just a bad look. Bad look.
I would argue, too, that I think Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury may be the duo of those two, just given the way that this season has swung for them. But I get your point, because Dak obviously got the big contract, and it's the Dallas Cowboys. It's the brand.
Yep.
The 12 wins this year so easily to go out that way. And not to harp on it, because obviously, like, yes, I was correct in the 49ers beating them, but they were that team that I felt was going to get the 12 wins. Like, I ended up being right about that, but I truly felt that this was a team that could win a playoff game and at least show some signs of life. I just thought, obviously, as I said last week, that when it came down to the matchups, I just didn't think it was a good enough proper matchup for them. But it is disappointing, I think, overall. Like, you can't win your division that handily and have that easy of a division to run through. Like, the NFC East is not going to be this bad for very much longer, I don't think.
No,
now, maybe they will be.
The Eagles got 3 first-round draft picks, whether they use that to get a Russell Wilson or whether they use it to just build around Jalen Hurts. Like, they're going to be better. They're there. I mean, the Giants are a disaster, but the football team He's got a lot of talent. They're well coached. They need to figure out
and they'll get a quarterback eventually.
Yeah.
Like, they'll find that quarterback eventually. The defense isn't going to be as bad as it was last year. So, I mean, this was set. The table was set for the Dallas Cowboys, and they didn't get it done for a number of reasons. We'll kind of get into those. This is, of course, our divisional preview episode, so we're going to spend the majority of our time on that. But before we get into it, let's just give our some quick thoughts on the weekend that we just witnessed overall.
Yeah.
Anything primarily, I mean, I'm not going to go to a specific game. I'll just throw it to you. Was there something that stood out to you the most? I know we've touched on Dak Prescott and the Cowboys, but what else was on your radar after this weekend set of games?
Really impressed by the Bills to blow out the Patriots in the way they did. The fact that they just beat the Patriots face in with their offense. And it just goes to show you that game in the wind. It's like the only thing that can stop Josh Allen right now is like the wind elements. I mean, the game was cold, but that just did not affect them at all. And so very impressed by Buffalo in that win. Now, does that mean I feel good about Buffalo this weekend? We'll talk about that later. I also think in the same vein for the Rams to beat down the divisional opponent in that way, it just goes to show you that Sean McVay really does have such a control over his division when it's not Kyle Shanahan. And if you're a Rams fan, in a lot of ways, you got to be rooting for the Packers. I think the Rams would rather see Green Bay than San Francisco again. That's just the way. It's just they're kind of that kryptonite for them. The other things I really stuck out to me, a lot of people want to make a big deal about the whistle in the Cincinnati Raiders game. Cincinnati was the better team through most of that game. It's a stupid rule anyways, that if a whistle just inherently blows, that it automatically has to be a reversal of the downs, and like you just replay the down. That the whistle, in my opinion, it did blow, but it did not really affect the outcome of that play.
Correct.
Overall. So I think that's a little bit overblown. Joe Burrow, I mean, the dude is Joey Cool, man. He is big. He's the opposite of Kirk Cousins. I was saying it my Saturday show. I think I said in this show, he rises
to the occasion.
He is the on a Sunday at noon. He can throw 3 interceptions and lose to the Bears early in the season, and then on a primetime game, look at what Joe Burrow does. I mean, Joe Burrow is he's almost bad for the NFL in a lot of ways, because every franchise thinks to themselves, the bad franchises, the Lions, the Jags, the Bears, the Jets, the Giants. I mean, these bad franchises, the football team is a good example right now too. Oh my God, we just got to get our Joe Burrow. And if you get your Joe Burrow, you can go from being one of the worst teams in the league to, even though he tears his ACL, his MCL, his PCL, in a year he can win a playoff game. Like, I mean, that, like, he is that transformative. Now, you know, the Bengals have done other things to help out Joe Burrow, but I mean, he is that type of electric player. And I just hope his career trajectory keeps going the way it does, because this AFC quarterback battle of him, Allen, Herbert, Mahomes, I mean, so many of these guys, Lamar Jackson, it is just going to be so much fun, especially if Trevor Lawrence ever really becomes something. So much.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk, because we've talked about the NFC being really, really top heavy with just phenomenal teams, right? Yeah. That's going to be shifting very soon, I think, because we're talking about the Chargers didn't even make the playoffs this year. Yeah. Like Herbert will be in the playoffs routinely over the next decade, and we just know that. So I think there's a lot of things. I think the Bengals, to me, though, to kind of go off your point real quick, they are the ones that stood out to me the most because of all of the weight that bear down on that franchise. This was, I get that it was the Raiders, and I get that on paper, a lot of people picked the Bengals to win, rightfully so. They were the better team.
They were my pick at -6. I'm good about that.
Yeah. But for them to actually finally do it, which is something that's eluded. I mean, even at the end of the game, they got a bad, what was it? A roughing, was it a roughing the passer? Or I think it was a roughing the passer penalty late in the game.
Yes.
That gave the Raiders some life. And I'm like, oh no, are the Bengals going to do this again? And it reminded me of like 5 years ago when they did with the Steelers. Steelers were dead in the water, and then they had 3 penalties on the drive that, you know, the Steelers eventually went on to win the game. But so for the Bengals to end that 31-year drought, and for Joe Burrow to get his first playoff win, I just think all of those things combined, Zach Taylor, the questions we've had about him, I think they exercised a lot of demons this past Sunday. And so for me, that's what stood out the most.
Yeah, my final point on this past weekend, honestly, was the quarterback play. The better quarterbacks won. Yeah. The better quarterbacks won. I mean, Allen throws 5 touchdowns. Mahomes throws 5 touchdowns. Brady was surgical, you know, and he was barking at teammates and wouldn't let him get taken out of the game. Just overwhelming the young quarterbacks. Obviously, Kyler Murray did not play nearly as well as you expect him to. And then Matt Stafford played well. I mean, and it wasn't overwhelming that just as a team they played well, and he didn't blow it. He certainly had a really solid game on Monday night. And then Jimmy G, it's funny. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I predicted the Cowboys to win, is because everyone on paper, they shove it down your throats. Pro Football Focus does. ESPN constantly does. We disrespect Dak. Is Dak one of the top 5 quarterbacks? Look at the numbers Dak puts up. And they tell you all the time, Dak's a top 5 quarterback. Dak is an elite quarterback. And then he has the bad game. And you know, Jimmy G didn't play incredible. But if I'm paying that guy $40 million, I mean, every other quarterback that won this weekend, I feel like I'd pay $40 million to. And then you see a Dak Prescott. I just think that weighs on you. Eventually, you know, you had the better team, better record at home, and you're the $40 million man, and you just didn't show up this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you on that front. And there's going to be a lot of question marks moving forward in terms of what they're going to have to do to address this and make it better, because how many good weapons they have, everything was set for them to be great. Defense played really, really well this year. So it's like, how much better do you guys need it to be for you to make the Super Bowl run? Like, at home. It just, I think there's going to be a lot of questions about Mike McCarthy and whether or not he's just equipped to lead this franchise to another Super Bowl. Not a bad coach by any stretch. I think that's proven in his resume, but, you know, sometimes it's about having the right coach. And I think with Dan Quinn there, that's going to be very tempting for them to have to at least, you know, entertain the possibility of promoting him to head coach at some point. But, that's certainly something that stood out this week, was just the 49ers being able to once again take it to a team based on their their physicality, and then just their ability to win in situational moments. And so I guess before we kind of get into our full divisional breakdown and looking ahead to some of these games, we'll stick here with the Cowboys, Mark, because that, of course, meets our bold strategy, a very clear one out of this entire week. And that is, of course, the final drive for the Dallas Cowboys as they trailed 23-17, an opportunity to try and win the game. They're at the San Francisco 41. Time's running out. There's about, I think, 14 seconds by the time they hiked the ball. And then Dak runs for 17 yards. He decides to go right up the middle for a 17-yard scramble. No timeouts left. So they have to spike the ball. And, of course, there's that wiggle room of time between sliding, getting up, trying to get the ball to your center, trying to get the ref to, the ref has to touch the ball there. You can't just spike it. And so between that whole shuffle, they weren't able to get the spike off in time. End of game. The decision to do the quarterback draw for one up the middle, curious, of course.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
And just the decision overall to not have any awareness or leadership from the coaching staff as well to say, this is what we have to do on this particular play in this particular moment. Curious decision by Dak, curious decision by the Cowboys to go with that. And there's so many things that have to go right for that play to get off and for that to be able to work for them. And, they weren't even able to get that desperation heave that you'd like to have in the final second.
Brian Dable, Byron Leftwich, and Todd Bowles were coordinators that had great weekends going into head coaching interviews. Great weekends. And then there was Kellen Moore. And the fact that the story is that he called the play and McCarthy okayed it, I think is shameful on both of them. And I don't know, then I would want to know more. If I was Jerry Jones in the organization, Stephen Jones, I'd want to know exactly who decided this would be a play that we would, because as they all said, we practice this. No, we practice this. End of games, we practice this. We know that everything has to go on. I would want to know who exactly, is it McCarthy that put that play in originally as something we're going to practice? Is it Kellen Moore? Because to me, that is such a glaring blind spot of what are you talking about? Like that is it's just a bad call. Anything under a minute left, you just don't do that unless the quarterback, you let him know, hey, if you have to just run, if nothing's open, because we can't take a sack, you know what I mean? But to design a quarterback draw in that moment, and they argued that they had practiced it so many times, but then the way the offensive line and Dak, they all handled it, it's like they just thought they could set the ball down and go.
Right, it's at least hand the ball to the ref instantly.
You say if you would practice this a bunch, wouldn't you then know that, wouldn't they say in practice over and over and over again, hey, remember the ref has to touch the ball. So again, if they didn't practice that and that was something that fell through the cracks, that looks bad on Dak, that looks bad on Kellen Moore, that looks bad on McCarthy, that looks bad on everyone at the Cowboys. It was a nightmare call. I would want to know the truth. Listen, I've not been
and to be fair, the odds of them even capitalizing on a Hail Mary, very minimal. You want to give yourself that chance, of course, but it's like, they didn't do themselves any favors the entire game. But obviously that's such an important moment.
It's the opposite problem the Raiders had at the end of the game, where Derek Carr spiked the ball when he probably shouldn't have. When the down is more important than the clock, the clock is more important than the down. It just was a total nightmare of a disaster. And again, I do think no matter what, it all falls on the head coach. But it looks bad for your $40 million quarterback to not in his headset be like, we're really doing that. It looks bad for your offensive coordinator, Wiz Kid, who everyone's talking about. Teams should be looking to hire. Who I've not been high on Kellen Moore. I'll put it out there. The Bears hire him. I would not be like jumping up for joy. I'd be very much like, okay, let's see how this goes. And it looks really bad for your head coach that already is kind of got some, what's the best way to say it? Real big question marks about his game time, his game management decisions and stuff like that. It's a bad look. And again, I thought the biggest loser of the weekend, Dak and the Cowboys, you just can't be the $40 million quarterback. You can't try to convince me that you're a top 5 quarterback in the likes of a Burrow, in the likes of a Brady, a Rodgers, Mahomes, Allen, these guys who are winning playoff games over and over again now. You know, Josh Allen, second year in a row. It's like Josh Allen was in an AFC Championship game last year. Josh Allen just exercised demons against, his biggest rival. And you have a home playoff game and you can't beat the 49ers after the first time being in the playoffs for years. It just does not look good.
No, 23 of 43 for Dak Prescott, 254 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, quarterback rating of 69, and he took 5 sacks as well in this game. Those are not the types of numbers you expect from a franchise quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys in first round of the playoffs.
I get it.
Yeah, I think that says enough.
Tampa, if they're in Green Bay, you know what I mean? It's like, hey, that's tough.
And if they're playing a world-beating defense, but in San Fran is better than I think they get credit for. But yeah, their secondary has been their vulnerability, and you have the best receiving core, or among the best receiving cores in the league. This is just unacceptable, right? I mean, it just can't happen. There's that long list that people are trotting out about, Jake Delhomme has more playoff wins in the last 20 years
than the
Dallas Cowboys do.
Yeah. And it's just true.
It's really rough for a team with the largest fan base, a team that is the biggest brand of the NFL, America's team, to be in this spot for so long. And it's just rough. It's rough how that has played out recently for them. Something's got to give for sure.
Really quickly before we move on, I'll ask you this question because it's something I've been pondering in my head and I just don't know the answer.
Okay.
Do you think within the next week, Cliff Kingsbury or Mike McCarthy gets fired?
I don't see Cliff Kingsbury being fired.
Okay.
Mainly because of the way I get that they unraveled, but I think for what he did with the team for the first half of the season, I think was enough to inspire confidence that he can run a competent offense.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think they need to figure out. I'm not sure it's a coincidence that their lackluster performances have come in the latter part of the year where it gets a lot colder and conditions aren't as ideal. They do seem like a team that's much more suited for dome play, right?
And
maybe that is an
Hopkins.
oversimplification.
They're very Hopkins reliant right now.
And that too. And that's, we saw that absence being a glaring issue this past week. But I think, what he did, with James Conner too, like it being able to implement, so I think he's earned himself another year. I don't see that. I wouldn't be shocked though with the McCarthy thing. However, knowing Jerry Jones and maybe the leash that he tends to give his head coaches, it would seem a bit premature just from knowing what Jerry Jones does. And so that again, but I just think, Dan Quinn's interviewing here going to be interviewing for a lot of jobs. Are you willing to lose him, or are you going to at least entertain the possibility of having him be your head coach? Like to me, that would be something that I think they need to consider. But again, as we sit here today, I don't see either of those guys being fired.
You're the only one I've heard talk about Dan Quinn getting the job and not Kellen Moore. So I think that's fascinating.
I think it would make more sense. I mean, what he's done with the team, and he's a been there, done that kind of guy. I think he instills more confidence. And you keep Kellen Moore probably. I think Dan Quinn would keep Kellen Moore as his OC. I just for me personally, I don't get why everyone's so confident in Kellen Moore as being a head coaching candidate.
I agree. No, I agree. But
some people are great.
Dan Quinn either.
Yeah, I mean, some people have just been great coordinators, and maybe that's what they are. Like, Quinn? Fair enough. I would have more confidence in Quinn leading that team
he did
as
get
a head
to a
coach.
Super Bowl. It's true. He did get to a Super Bowl. All right, we can move on. It's interesting. I think Cliff Kingsbury's seat should be very hot next year, but I think he deserves another chance. The injuries fell apart. The team really kind of fell apart. But I mean, again, first time for the Cardinals in the playoffs in how long? And the first time for Kyler Murray. The fact that they're a one and done, it's not shocking. They weren't the 1 seed. They didn't get blown out at home. Yeah. And then with McCarthy, I think there's if there's real interest in Kellen Moore, it might be offered a job. I think Jerry Jones is the type of guy who might pull the trigger and promote Kellen Moore before losing Kellen Moore. I think he really likes Kellen Moore a lot more than I certainly do, but it's interesting enough to think about.
Definitely. I mean, I think we'll have like always, we'll have a very fruitful offseason to discuss.
Yeah.
I mean, what we got like 8 head coaching vacancies right now, so it's, it'll be entertaining. We'll see what happens with the Raiders too. Honestly, Bisaccia has done enough, I think, to really give them big time consideration of keeping the guy. And he's got the vote of confidence from his quarterback, who didn't have to say what he said about his head coach and said that he should be the guy moving forward. That's big time stuff right there from your franchise QB. So,
and you know what, the Raiders are cheap. So if Bisaccia is there and they don't, that whatever, we'll see. But I agree. We could save the rest of that for the offseason. Let's get on to this weekend.
Let's do it. So we got, we'll just start with the Saturday games again. The weekend slate here. No Monday game though this week, so that is done for. We just got the Saturday, Sunday. So we'll start with the first matchup of Saturday. That is the Bengals on the road at the 1 seed Tennessee Titans, who are getting ready for their, of course, first playoff game. Rested, ready to trot Derrick Henry back out there. So a lot of things in play here for this game. 4:30 kickoff on CBS this Saturday. What are your thoughts about the Bengals' chances of going on the road here versus the Titans, who, man, they got to be one of the more curious 1 seeds that I can remember in some time, because they are really good when they got Derrick Henry and company for sure. I'm just not sure that they have the lore of the 1 seed, whereas, the Chiefs certainly carry that with them. The Packers do, etc.
Yeah, I hate that we're starting with this game, because this is the game I honestly, I just have zero confidence. I have real confidence in the other games. I have zero confidence in this one. Listen, I love Joe Burrow. I really like what Cincinnati's put together. I do firmly believe that Tennessee is a weak 1 seed overall. I think it's weird for Tennessee trying to insert Derrick Henry back, and they're going to, it looks like, try to do that. I think there is a pressure of being the 1 seed. I think the Bengals are playing with such house money. They're going to be loose. I think they're going to be, you had your head coach in bars giving out game balls this past Saturday night. I mean, they are, house money. The line is 3.5. So what Vegas is telling you is they think Tennessee is favored, even if it's a neutral field, but not by much. The fact that in Tennessee, I do think home field advantage in the playoffs. Every single stadium, if you're watching these games this weekend, you could feel the home field advantage. Maybe not the Cowboys-Niners game as much. That felt like there was Niners. It felt there was Niners crowds there as well, but the Niners travel really well, and that's kind of typical Dallas. But you could really feel the home field advantage. I mean, even LA on Monday night, it was a Rams crowd, and it felt that way throughout the game. Listen, I think that Titans. I just think that I'm
right there with you, man.
All right, I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna trust my gut. I'm gonna say that Joe Burrow wins the game. I think he does. I think it's 3.5. I like Cincinnati plus 3.5. I'll take them with the points and to win. I'm gonna say that the Titans come out a little sluggish off the bye. I think they're gonna try maybe force feed Derrick Henry. I think that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are just so explosive that at any moment they can score. If somehow the Bengals are up 13-7, like midway through the second quarter, and the Bengals get like a big 3rd down sack at midfield, I just feel there's going to be a tightness and the air sucked out of the stadium in Tennessee, in Nashville, that could really, a guy like Joe Burrow would just ascend to and just bask in that. And I just feel it being a tight game, and in a tight game, I like the Bengals. I'll take the Bengals and the 3.5. I'll take them to win in Tennessee. I know I'll probably have egg in my face, and I'm downing a 1 seed, but I just get, this is a Joe Burrow pick more than anything.
That's fair. I mean, that's what I struggle with when I'm looking at this game myself, is because when you're picking the quarterback, it's a clear advantage for Cincinnati, and then offensive weapons, clear advantage Cincinnati, outside of, the running back, although Joe Mixon had a phenomenal season, and he certainly
he really did. He's
up
a great
there
runner.
as one of the better runners. But Derrick Henry takes the cake in that regard. The only way Tennessee wins this game, in my view, and it's one that, very likely could happen. So I'm not saying like they only have this one chance and it's slim. No, it's a good chance, but they have to keep Joe Burrow off the field.
Yeah,
so
it's a great
what do they, Derrick Henry has to be healthy and ready to go. I'm not as worried about rust for a running back as I am for even a wide receiver, to be honest, or obviously a quarterback or something like that who's missed a bunch of time. I think running backs can get back into the rhythm pretty quickly. And a guy like him, who's been hit so many times already in his career, I don't think that will necessarily, be a shocker to him.
Yeah.
And let's remember, he's not like a year removed. He's only about 2 months removed from gameplay. I think I'm going to pick Tennessee to win this game by the slimmest of margins.
Okay.
And like a 24-23 type of scenario here. So I would pick Cincinnati to cover a very small spread to begin with. I think the vote of confidence for me is even not even Derrick Henry, it's Mike Vrabel. I think if I'm going to go with Mike Vrabel versus Zach Taylor, Mike Vrabel at home, Mike Vrabel with an extra week of preparation, all of the emotion from the Bengals of that first win at home, the playoff drought.
Yep.
I think I'll pick Tennessee just because of that. But I'm not, overly confident in that assessment, but I think that's what I will pick. I'm going to have to stick with what I picked before the playoff games. I did my whole bracket. I had Tennessee winning, and I'll stick with that. But I will say, Bengals have been super impressive. I wouldn't be shocked if they come away with a win here. And if they do, it's going to be because Jamar Chase, T. Higgins combined for like 4 touchdowns, and Joe Burrow's lighting it up. Like that's what's going to happen.
I agree. I think, what scares me in picking the Bengals is that like opening drive, Titans get the ball. It's like, first down and 10 at the 25-yard line. They hand it to Derrick Henry and he rips like a 30-yard run. And that like the stadium will erupt. And, they score a touchdown on that first drive. Like that's the type of energy. That's the type of energy that you're like, oh crap. But if there's one quarterback right now in the NFL besides maybe Patrick Mahomes that I feel confident that will be like, all right, whatever. I don't care how loud it is. I feel like it's kind of Joe Burrow. I mean, there's something to his attitude and the way his swagger. So it's going to be a fun game. All 4 of these games, I will say, I think it's the NFL got so lucky. I mean, even the Niners beating the Cowboys, I think they would have loved the ratings of Cowboys in Green Bay. But like, I really, really feel as though this is a golden matchup for the NFL in a divisional round.
It was probably a win-win for them regardless, right? Because the 49ers Packers have that recent history of the NFC Championship. The Dallas and Packers have, that history as well several years ago with the Dak no catch. Or not Dak, Des Bryant no catch. And the branding of it. I think they kind of had a win-win scenario with this particular matchup.
But I guess it would have been the Rams.
Either way. You're right.
It would have been the Rams in Green Bay.
Yeah, so I take
and then
that
Dallas
back.
in Bucks. So I think overall it's a better matchup anyways. I think this is just it's great. All right, you want to move on to 49ers plus 5.5?
Let's talk about it. That's Saturday night game. Packers get to host this one, and it's Aaron Rodgers versus Jimmy G, Kyle Shanahan versus Matt LaFleur. This should be a good matchup. Obviously, it's, rematch from much earlier in the season.
Yeah.
Both teams obviously are a lot different at this point, but the Packers did win that game by 2, 30-28. A lot of scoring, a lot of running the football from the 49ers. This one's a hard one to kind of look at too, but I think maybe you feel differently. I feel like it's got to be the Packers here for me to win this game, and that's just because of Aaron Rodgers primarily. I mean, I just think Aaron Rodgers gets the best of Jimmy G, and when you're talking about that big of a disparity between starting quarterbacks, to me, it's kind of a no-brainer to pick. Not to mention in Lambeau, right? It's going to be 16 degrees, probably a 0-degree wind chill. I think that favors the Green Bay team versus the West Coast 49ers.
Go, Pack, go. I'm on
wow, I was singing the song too. Dang.
I've only had to sing it once in my life. That was at Brett Favre's 200th consecutive career start. I was in 8th grade and I saw a Vikings fan get beer thrown at him. And I looked to my left and my right at Kuhn and Miles and Mr. Miles. And even though we were wearing neutral colors, I thought, all right, it's time for me to start cheering for the Packers so I don't end up with a beer thrown at me.
Wait, you were at the game?
I was at the game Monday Night
Wild.
Football.
Nice.
Anyways, listen, the Packers, correct me if I'm wrong, but they beat the 49ers last year, I'm pretty sure, in a head-to-head game before all the injuries and everything totally fell apart for the Niners last year. I'm pretty sure.
I can look that up. I'll look it up right now.
I'm pretty sure they kind of got a monkey off their back a little bit. I think Aaron Rodgers.
When you say last year, are you talking like not this current season?
Yeah, I'm talking about last season.
Yeah.
Okay. Or did they play this year? I thought they played last year.
No, they did play this. They played in week 3. They played week 3.
And the Packers won.
And the Packers won by 2, 30-28.
So
I remember I watched that game, and it was week 3, 30-28.
They have a win against them this iteration of the Niners since being blown out in the playoff game.
That's
2 years ago.
Correct.
So that's what I'm thinking. They've gotten that a little bit off their back. They've shown they can beat them, kind of face the bully that they bullied them around. I'll say this, Dan, I think for me, mentally as a human being, my biggest joy in life is watching Aaron Rodgers lose NFC Championship games in Green Bay. So even though I don't want him to get playoff wins, it's better for me and my mental state if Aaron Rodgers beats down the 49ers to then lose at home in the NFC Championship game against either the Bucs or the Rams. That's better for me. So that's what I'm rooting for. Right. As far as actual football wise goes, I just think the Packers they're just more physical now. They have found a way since that embarrassing loss in the 49ers a couple of years ago to be a more physical team. They're even a more physical team than they were last year. And I think that Dylan has a large part of that in the way he's grown over the last year, and this season, his second year. The Packers, I don't worry about them being rested off a bye. They have, even though Matt LaFleur is only in his third year, they have a lot of playoff and big game experience. So I feel good about that with the Packers. And listen, I think the Niners getting, depending on what the weather's like, I think the cold weather always favors the Packers in Green Bay. It is a factor. Jimmy G, if it's, I know he played in New England, but I think if there's any real inclement weather or any sort of extra cold, I think that just favors Aaron Rodgers so much. I like the Packers in a very tight, low-scoring game. Aaron Rodgers will lead them on a touchdown drive late, probably to cover the 5.5. But it wouldn't shock me if this is a 17-17 game midway through the third, and maybe the Niners get a field goal with a Robbie Gould field goal to go up 20-17, maybe even late in the third, early in the fourth. And then Aaron Rodgers puts together a scoring drive or 2 in the fourth quarter. The defense makes a play, gets a strip sack fumble on Jimmy G. I like the Packers at home to cover the 5.5, but it's a really good game.
Yeah, I agree too. I think the Packers are someone that will be able to pull away late. I don't see the 49ers getting beaten down so much early to where it's kind of put out of hand by halftime. I do think the Packers end up pulling away though and making it, somewhat out of reach in the fourth quarter. So I agree with you there. My initial scores are whatever they were, but I would say just in terms of the spread and things like that, it's somewhere in the ballpark of like 31-20. I could see the Packers winning this one handily, but doing so late. So it's still a good game, competitive game throughout. And Green Bay just able to get that extra drive to really put it out of reach. So I would take Green Bay to cover. Yeah. And I do think, in terms of this whole playoff race, and, we may have mentioned it last week or the week before, it's the Chiefs and the Packers are the two teams that have the most to benefit from this home field advantage for a number of reasons. But I think weather and being used to said weather is the biggest reason, aside from, the difficulty of playing in those stadiums and the noise and the fans. I just think that's where we're talking about some major advantages here, just based on, being able to play in those environments in that weather throughout a season and now here in the postseason too. Packers are, but they've played there in the championship games in recent memory and have lost. So it's not like they can't lose. But I think here in the divisional round, I agree with you. Packers win. So I take them in this one by 11. Rams at the Buccaneers on Sunday. So first game there, 3:00. This an intriguing game here, I think, too, because I didn't expect to get what we got from the Buccaneers, to be quite honest with you.
Agreed.
The matchup itself obviously was like, okay, well, Tampa's getting the lowly Philadelphia Eagles that limped into the postseason, but given their physicality and their ability to run the football, the Eagles, made me think that this was going to be closer than I thought. A lot of people were making it out to be, and it ended up being Tampa Tom, doing his thing, and maybe the run game wasn't where they hoped it was, but it didn't matter. And even without some of his weapons, Tom Brady was able to do Tom Brady things and get this team in ready to go. And they performed well. And then the Rams did too against a rival in the Cardinals. So I think both teams playing some really good football as of late. The Buccaneers get this one at home. What are your thoughts as Tampa favored by just a field goal going into this one?
Yeah, that means, what Vegas is telling you is because the Rams are +3, Bucks -3, is that they believe these two teams, it's a pick'em game. If it's a neutral field, it would be head-to-head. No, they don't really necessarily favor each one. I think part of that is to do with the Bucs still being beat up. Now, the Bucs got through last week without Leonard Fournette. Will he come back? They activate him this week. Yet to be seen. Mike Evans was big for them. Gronk will always find a way to be, quiet one game, and then Gronk could go off for 7 catches, 120 yards, and 2 touchdowns in this game. I don't think it would shock anyone. I think the Rams defense is fascinating to me because, once again, they have such stars that can just make plays. Von Miller could just make a play. Aaron Donald, he's still overall, he didn't have a better season than TJ Watt, but I still think he's the best defensive player in the league. And he can just make a play at any moment. Jalen Ramsey can make a play at any moment. But I do think there is a part of the Rams defense that can be undisciplined that a guy like Tom Brady can take advantage of. The Rams can overwhelm a Kyler Murray who kind of wants things to break down a little bit, get a little fuzzy, and then he, run and scramble or have a guy kind of do a backyard football. The Rams, I think, play defense against that really well because Aaron Donald, Von Miller, Jalen Ramsey, their 3 biggest stars of Leonard Floyd, they like playing defense like that. They want to just kind of be like, all right, screw it. Let's just go make a play. So I think against a Tom Brady who's so surgical, it worries me. Now, I do think, though, if the Rams can run the football and get production of their run game and keep Tampa Bay honest, it obviously favors a Rams team that I think is just healthier right now offensively. With Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham Jr. playing best football of his career in the past 3-4 years. It's been that long. It's just going to be a fascinating game. I think this is the closest game of the weekend. I think this is the game of the weekend that goes down to the wire. I think this is the game of the weekend that everyone will really be talking about on Monday. And we're going to spend the most time on a Monday, whether it's a call, a no call, a big play, a late drive. Man, it's a tough one. I just trust Tom Brady at home. And like I said, it's a favorable matchup for the way Tom Brady plays quarterback versus the way the Bucs want to play defense, and the Bucs defense versus the Rams need the run game to be honest, to be effective in play action. And the Bucs defense can stop the run. I'll trust Tampa Tom, and I'll roll with the Bucs at home. I wouldn't touch the line because I think it could be 1, 2, or 3 point game. It's going to be really, really close. I'll roll with the Bucs, but it wouldn't depress me if the Rams won, because honestly, I think if I'm the NFL and I'm at TV ratings, Chiefs versus Rams, Chiefs versus Bucs, or Chiefs versus Packers are all ratings gold to me, and I'd love to see any of them.
Yeah. This is a tough one as well. I agree with you in terms of Tom Brady's surgical approach being somewhat of a problem here for the Rams. for a number of reasons. But so I do think that we see a lot of Giovanni Bernard in this game. I see
Agreed.
a lot of. I think Tom is gonna go back to I'm taking the check down all day. If you're gonna try and bait us into these deep passes and let Jalen Ramsey run free down there, or try and sit back and being able to jump a route. Instead, we're just gonna make you step up, and then that's gonna open up a deep shot to Mike Evans at some point along the way. By the way, Mike Evans has really been. I don't want to say underrated, because I think a lot of people do acknowledge how good he is, but he's an underrated aspect of this offense. He's still so good. It's not like like Jalen Ramsey alone's not going to be able to take away Mike Evans for the whole game. He's going to have some big moments in this one too. But I think Gronk over the middle, sitting into some of those spot zones that the Rams like to employ, and a lot of the running back out of the backfield, I think that will be a big part. Overall, I'm going to take the Rams in this one, because I think the Rams are able to run the football better in this game. Even if Leonard Fournette is able to come back, I worry about if he had played this past game, let's say, I would have felt more confident about their run game. But I think this shows that he's really that close to not being super ready. So even if they roll him out this week, I have my reservations about his involvement and how much of an impact he's going to be able to have. We saw Cam Akers, incredible job by Cam Akers, by the way, to come back from an Achilles injury and to have the impact he had in an elimination game, first game back with the Rams. So I see that as being a big, difference maker. Now the Rams have 3 big time components in their backfield. I think we're going to see a lot more of them, a lot less of Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp. And I still think that's going to be enough. If they try and air it out a ton, then I give Tampa Bay, the advantage there. So if Sean McVay and company try to get too cute, want Matt Stafford to really air it out and dominate the Bucs, I don't think that's how they're going to win this football game. If they do that, they're going to get into some early turnovers, and then I would give the Bucs the edge in that regard. I just don't think that's what happens. I think they're smart enough to recognize that if they can just control that line of scrimmage early, then they'll have the best shot at winning. I give the Rams the edge there, but I agree with you, probably the closest game of the weekend. It's going to go one way or the other. If I were to have a prediction on it, 27-24 in favor of the Rams, and it's a push there for the spread, but that's kind of my early thoughts on that one.
Tom Brady can take advantage, in my opinion, of a retired Eric Weddle. Kyler Murray.
Yeah, that is that's a problem for the Rams for sure.
You know what, Dan? I buy everything you're saying. I just think it comes down. To who's going to make the least amount of mistakes and who's going to stay true to who they are. And I know the Bucs don't have another identity. The Rams, we've seen them go through the season and almost kind of Jekyll and Hyde. When they run the ball and they run the Sean McVay offense with Jared Goff that got them to the Super Bowl, the kind of Kyle Shanahan run offense, they are nasty. And then they get in these moments where they just get Cooper Kupp happy. And Matt Stafford led the league in interceptions. That's going to play a factor. That could very well play a factor in this game. As much as I love Stafford and seen him do well, again, I think part of this goes, in my opinion, as well, to who I think has a better chance of beating the Packers in Lambeau, and I want that to happen. I think it's the Bucs. I think the Rams are maybe even the better team, but I think the Bucs have a better chance. So all of this, again, just let it be known.
You're just putting it out there and willing it to happen.
I have to will it to happen. And so that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at with that. But I love that we're kind of on a lot of different sides here so far.
Yeah.
And that's what the divisional round should be. It should put your mind in a pretzel. We got some really good games here with some really good teams left.
And I think we'd all agree that the right teams are in this round. And that's, you don't always say that. Now, yeah, our good friend who we had on the show last year, Steven Rogers, we have like a text thread where we talk about the games and stuff. And he made an interesting point. I'd have to look at it and expand it beyond just like recent memory. But he basically said like parity in the NFL in the postseason is pretty much a myth. And how often do we see the Cinderella team make that deep run? Not very often, actually. It doesn't happen very often.
I can think of.
Right. The Giants, you could argue, I guess, the Ravens during that 2012 magical postseason with Joe Flacco.
Yeah.
But even then they were really good teams. It wasn't like the Steelers of 2005 making that improbable run to the Super Bowl.
Agreed.
So those, like, the fact that we can only think of a handful in the past couple of decades shows you. So he is right about that. And that's why I think, like, the best teams often do get to this point. It's in the championship and then the Super Bowl where, okay, maybe sometimes, you're going to beat the Chiefs in the AFC championship game on a fluke, or they're the Patriots as well. But I think the right teams are here in the divisional round. I think we'd agree on that. And so for now, it's really about, their merit has gotten them to this point. Now it's really about attention to detail. Now it's about not making the one crucial mistake that the postseason, will kill you for. And so that's really what it comes down to in these next couple rounds, for sure.
No, you make a great point there. And I think Rodgers does as well. I mean, who argued the 6 best teams all year? They were constantly in the first class of Super Bowl, playing in and out of it. The 6 best teams, 3 from the AFC, the Titans, Bills, Chiefs, and 3 from the NFC, the Packers, Bucks, Rams. I mean, like, at the beginning of the year, if you'd have told me those are the 6 teams left standing at the tops of each division, you'd be like, yeah, okay, I buy that. That makes sense.
Sure.
That makes sense.
I'd say the Bengals are probably the surprise.
Bengals are the surprise because the Niners, I think a lot of people, you included, had them as a playoff team. And they're right there. And listen, if the Niners and Cincy certainly can win this game, it's like we've said, and it's kind of like what the Super Bowl plan's all about. The Niners and the Bengals could go on a run where they end up in a championship game, but the Super Bowl plane always comes around where it's like, all right, I don't see them then winning that game. They don't win. Bengals don't win in Kansas City. The Niners don't win in Tampa or in LA, I think, again, to beat the Rams again for a chance to Super Bowl. Now that I'm saying it, I guess the Niners have a better chance, especially if it's in LA, because they just own Sean McVay and the Rams.
That's true. They do. Yeah.
You can see how it plays out. So let's get to the final game. Bills +2 at Chiefs, Dan.
Yeah, this an interesting way how this played out as well. And we get, the high-powered offense in the Bills going up against the high-powered offense in the Chiefs. The one thing I think that's going to have to give here is, is going to be either a turnover, of course, because that just tends to be the name of the game a lot of times. But really, it's also about, like, who's able to, run the football at times. And I don't think either of these teams is going to just dominate on the ground and employ that time. They're both going to go to the air. They're both going to lean into their strengths, no question. But I think situationally, are they able to, first and goal from the 5, are they able to punch it in? Are they able to get that crucial, 3rd and 1 conversion, at the 45-yard line to extend a drive? I mean, those are going to be some of the really pivotal moments in this game. I think the Chiefs have the upper hand slightly in that. And the Chiefs defense is playing light years better than they were at the beginning of the season. That's their biggest reason for their turnaround, I think. So if you were to say, who's going to win a shootout that's almost guaranteed to be a shootout, I would lean Chiefs, because I think the Chiefs' odds of getting a crucial turnover when it matters is just a little bit, higher than the Bills. I will say Micah Hyde made an incredible interception in the end zone last week.
Game changer.
So absolute game changer. But I'll give the Chiefs a little bit of an edge, particularly because of Chris Jones and what that front can do. But it's going to be, this is the matchup of the weekend, and it's great that it comes as the last game as well. I'm super excited for this one. I take the Chiefs.
Okay.
They're -2. Yeah, I take them to cover by 4, I'd say, but it's going to be super close.
I actually don't think it's going to be super close. I think in the second half of this game, you're going to see the Kansas City Chiefs pull away. I love the Chiefs in this game. I think the Chiefs could win. I may find an alternate line and try to make some more money. I think the Chiefs could end up winning by close to double digits. Not that that doesn't mean it's going to be a bad game, but listen, this Bills team is getting a lot of love right now because they demolished, and they rightfully so demolished that New England Patriots team that a lot of people thought towards the end of the season could maybe have a run in them, that they could be kind of the Niners of the AFC. This Bills team, they are very good, and I like them a lot. And I know they won in Kansas City earlier, but this Chiefs team is playing different football. This is postseason football. This is postseason Mahomes. This is again a Chiefs crowd that you just cannot underestimate the home field advantage. And I do think that Josh Allen will score. And I do think that this game will be really entertaining early in the third quarter. But at some point in time, the Chiefs onslaught will happen. It just does. This is Chiefs football, playoff football in the AFC the past 3 years. It's just what happens. And I think it'll happen again. I love the Chiefs in this game. I think they'll end up winning something along the lines of 33-24. I think it's a really entertaining game. I don't think it's Josh Allen's fault that they lose. I think it's a lot like what happened. I think Bills fans are going to feel a lot like Patriots fans last weekend, or like Steelers fans, just be like, God bless America. That's just an offense right now. Yeah. You just can't do anything with in Kansas City. Again, if this game was in Buffalo, I honestly feel like I would probably maybe take the Bills in a really close game and Josh Allen makes the play. But I think there's something about the Chiefs at home, and this is one of the reasons why it's important. The Chiefs know it's important and home field advantage in winning those games and getting on the run that they did to get to the 2 seed. And I think the Cincinnati Bengals are going to do them a favor by upsetting the Titans. I like the Chiefs. I like them fairly easy, and certainly to cover the 2. The Bills, I think, are the second best team in the AFC. I think the Bills and that Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, this is the second one of them. 2 years ago, I remember on my radio show on Saturday morning, before we ever started this show, I did a whole 20-minute segment on, oh my God, how lucky are we? We're going to get nothing but Mahomes and Deshaun Watson going back and forth like Brady and Manning. What it's actually turned into, and Deshaun Watson's own fault, it may be, if when you let the court documents come out, what it happens and whatever the legal issues go the way it goes, and Josh Allen's meteoric rise. We're getting Mahomes and Brady and Manning is now in the AFC. It's going to be Allen and Mahomes. Allen eventually will get over the hump. Allen eventually will get to a Super Bowl, I think, ahead of Mahomes. It'll be a down year for Mahomes. Something will happen. The seas will part. But right now, Mahomes is in his prime at home with Andy Reid, with their weapons still in their prime. I think the Chiefs are a wagon in that way. No pun intended for the Bills.
Yeah, and an underrated addition, likely to get CEH back in the backfield. Just some more reserves for the Chiefs to lean on. McKinnon played great. I mean, the Chiefs always find a way to get their weapons involved. Yeah. I mean, is Byron Pringle a guy that's going to score multiple touchdowns on most other teams? Probably not. And that's not to, he's a fast, talented guy, but it's just, he's the 5th on the depth chart there. Mecole Hardman, Demarcus Robinson. These are guys that they're just able to incorporate because of all the attention that's need to be paid elsewhere. And it's just, you can't take away all of their weapons. It's one of those unique things that they have so many guys.
Yeah. So can I ask you this in a kind of a nice little put a bow on this? Now, less than a week from now, on Monday, when we're recording next week's episode, previewing championship weekend, what do you think the storyline what is your storyline we're going to be talking about from this upcoming weekend? When we kind of did that quick little look back, what do you think if you had to predict, man, oh man, that's the storyline? Because for me, I think it's going to be one of 2 things from my picks. Joe Burrow is ice in his veins, and the kid is so impressive, but he's about to get blown out in Kansas City, but that's okay because he is so impressive. And I think the other thing to me is going to be Aaron Rodgers has a chance to avenge his loss to Tom Brady at home, and it's going to be must-watch TV. I think, though, to me, that's what I'm going to be talking about next week.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it's going to be, I agree with you on the Aaron Rodgers thing. I mean, I think it's going to be, this is Aaron Rodgers' year. I think after this week, like I said, I think they end up beating the 49ers pretty handily. I think it's close for, 2.5 to 3 quarters. And then I think the Packers just, put the hammer down, win by double digits. I think it's going to be, this is the Packers' year. Aaron Rodgers carves them up late, another, near perfect passer rating type of game. I think it's just going to be one of those things where they're saying the stars are seeming to align for Green Bay and for Aaron Rodgers, on his, quote unquote revenge tour, if you will, to get over the hump finally this year. I think that's going to be a storyline. And then I think the other one is, man, can the Rams actually do this? Because I think the Rams are the team that's in the championship game the following week. So I think it's going to be Rams-Packers, and I think people are going to say, man, do the Rams actually have this in them if they're able to overcome, the high-powered Cardinals offense, albeit, slumping late, and Tampa with Tom. They're able to overcome those two guys. Man, maybe they do have a shot here against the Green Bay Packers. So that's going to be those are probably going to be my two headlines, both coming out of the NFC there. If I were to say for the AFC, it would just be Mahomes and the Chiefs are unstoppable. They're going back. My early prediction has been Green Bay and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
We finally get Aaron versus Patrick.
Yeah,
we get it the past 2 regular seasons, but then Mahomes was injured, and then Aaron had COVID. We're finally going to get Mahomes versus Rodgers.
Those are my early predictions, and I've thought this is the Packers' year to overcome it and finally get over the hump. I've thought, this whole time they were the clear 1 seed in the NFC and, almost the clear 1 seed in the entire NFL. But I think the Chiefs are that close second. That's why I think, based on what we talked about with this being a meritocracy and the best teams tending to come out of the championship games, I think that's what's going to happen this year. And so, yeah, those are the early looks at that, going forward, but we'll see, man. It's any given Sunday, right? That's kind of what happens. So that's the look there for the divisional round. Is there anything else, Mark, that we need to touch on before we end the show and look forward to next week?
No, except for if the Bears don't hire Brian Daboll right now, that I'm going to be very upset. I'm all in on Brian Daboll, and one of the main things I just make my quick case for Brian Daboll. He's worked for Nick Saban. He's worked for Bill Belichick, and he has been with Josh Allen since they drafted him. He has helped. Now, Josh Allen is a rare talent, but he has helped turn Josh Allen from that bull in a china shop to still a bull in a china shop, but he's got a sniper rifle as well. And I just think that Brian Daboll, if you can get him in Chicago with Justin Fields, he's a thick man with a beard. I just feel like he'll look good in blue and orange in the windy city. I'm goo goo gaga for Brian Daboll right now.
So that it would be a very interesting pairing. I think that would. Yeah. I agree with you. I think that would pair well. It's also he's going to be a hot button topic for a lot of those vacancies. So it's really going to come down to he's probably going to be able to have his pick of the litter, so to speak. But I think that's the route you got to go. You got to go offense, though, for sure, right?
Agreed.
I mean, you got a young quarterback. You've got to make that the priority going into it. Hey, let's hope we didn't even mention this from the Patriots-Bills game, but let's hope that we can avoid any of the extracurricular objects being thrown into the end zone. Okay, all right. Let's. I'll just say that. That'll be my statement.
The Bills fans travel with tables and other paraphernalia.
That's for sure. They do. They like to make things interesting in the end zone for sure. So,
it wasn't. We'll it was cold outside, but not that cold.
Not that cold. Clearly.
Clearly not that cold.
All right, folks. That has been our divisional preview. Obviously, give us your thoughts as always. We'll have our predictions up there later this week as well, with some of our best bets and things like that. A lot of the lines a lot closer than last week's. We'll just say that. Which, hey, the Chiefs ended up covering that minus 12.5 pretty easily. So I'm not sure if there's going to be a line that's going to be easy to choose this time around. But we'll have our best bets of the week coming up later, and you can always hit us up on Twitter at Mark Hespin, at Dan Vasco, at FB Lounge Pod for the show. and give us your thoughts ahead of next week. We're only got a couple more of these, Mark. We got the championship preview, and then obviously the Super Bowl, and we'll have a Pro Bowl in there in between to talk about some stuff. So really excited for that. Excited for the final stretch here, and enjoy the slew of games this weekend. Everyone stay safe. Enjoy, hopefully. Hey, we got snow out here in the south. I didn't even mention. We got a lot of snow out here.
You guys got hit hard.
We got hit hard. Dabo Sweeney was sledding. He said it was only the third time since he's been out here at Clemson. So that's interesting stuff. But we'll try and enjoy the snow, and we'll see you all here next week.